Review, where college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, Jen Sipchak-Bankard, and I'm here with a veteran of Troy. He defies the gods. He's Greg Cass. How's it going, Greg?
A face, a fleet, a war. But how's it going, Jen? I'm excited to be here.
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to talk about the movie we're talking about today, and I was secretly hoping that would be your opening quote. So thank you for doing that. It's so good. So listeners, those are all references to the film we are here to review today, Christopher Nolan's adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey. It's here. It's finally here. It just opened this past weekend because we're recording this on Wednesday, July 22nd. So this is hot off the presses. Unfortunately, due to some delay in travel, PT could not be here, and we figured it was more important to just get an episode. And so this is just a guarantee that there's going to be another episode where PT can get in here and share his thoughts. So PT, we hope you're either sleeping or not, as Greg said off mic, in Colorado or somewhere stranded, somewhere strange. We really hope you made it home like Odysseus.
It is fitting in that way that we don't know. He's with Calypso somewhere. Charlize, let PT go home. Let PT go home.
Oh no, stop eating those lotus flowers. Okay, this is great. Sorry, listeners. We were already on our text thread making these types of jokes. It's not going to stop. Nolan filmed this action spectacle epic. I don't know. There's many more like monikers you could probably attach to this movie. It's the first film to be shot entirely with IMAX cameras. So that's a huge deal. And it features a murderer's row of movie stars in the cast. I'm not even going to be able to say all of them or all the roles that they play, but Matt Damon is Odysseus, Anne Hathaway is Penelope, Tom Holland is Telemachus, and it also features Robert Pattinson, Charlize Theron, Zendaya, ever heard of her, Elliot Page, John Bernthal, Lupita Nyong'o, Benny Safdie, John Leguizamo, Samantha Morton. Am I missing
Corey
anybody?
Hawkins.
Oh, that's right. Corey Hawkins.
Patel. He's
Himesh
awesome.
Patel. Yes.
Himesh Patel, sorry.
Who apparently I never watched that Beatles movie that he did yesterday.
We don't have time. I actually like that movie a lot. Although people hate that movie. But look, Jen, we might be getting new audience for Odyssey episodes. I don't want to turn them off now.
Okay.
So skip the yesterday takes.
Good call. We gotta lock in. We gotta focus. Listeners, if you are joining us for the first time, we will have a spoiler-free section designed for those who haven't seen the film. So usually it's like the first 20 to 30 minutes, you're safe from spoilers. And then with a very clear alert, we will shift into spoiler mode for the rest of the show. Greg, if listeners want to drug us and trap us on their island after listening to this episode, what can they do?
If they want to defy the gods and follow us, then they should definitely follow the Long Take Review wherever you are currently listening to this episode of the Long Take Review. We host the feed on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube, and many, many more places. If you like what we have to say, or you don't like what we have to say and want to, hit us with a spear in the eye, then you should follow us on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, at The Long Take Review, and on Letterboxd at LTR Pod, or using the hashtag LTR Pod, which is where you can see how many times we all end up seeing The Odyssey. Jen, have you been using your Odyssey punch card on Letterboxd?
I mean, I've logged both times that I've seen this movie.
So Letterboxd debuted a feature just for The Odyssey where there's a little punch card that you can pull up if you're on the film page, and you can make sure you see all 6 formats that it's available in and then brag about it. So I believe, have only seen one format, but it's the format everybody else is trying to see that they can't get into. And so maybe we should talk about that to begin with. But there is a cool feature that Letterboxd is debuting on this. So
wow.
And I think they're running some kind of contest where if you do your thing and you send them a picture of it, you get entered to win a copy of the screenplay signed by Nolan. So get all on it. This is not an endorsement of Letterboxd any more than my life is an endorsement of Letterboxd.
I mean, I was going to say, it's a lifestyle. I did not know about any of that. I thought you meant proverbial punch card, and I was like, what is he getting at? Like, I've seen the movie. Is he trying to get me to admit how many times I've seen this movie? I don't know. But that's crazy. I've done this all wrong, apparently. I haven't seen it twice.
There are 6 boxes. I don't know if I'll get them. There's IMAX 70 millimeter,
Hmm.
IMAX, Dolby,
Okay.
35 millimeter, 70 millimeter, and then just premium large format, which I believe just means you saw it
Any of
like a
those?
normie. Yeah. Like one
Well,
other
premium
way.
large
Or like
format usually means IMAX or some kind of.
usually I was just like, if you just went on a Tuesday night and it was the only seat available and saw it on a normal screen,
Then
that's
it
what
would
I was
count.
going to use that one for in my
Okay.
book. I kind of explored my options. I don't think there's a 35 millimeter anywhere near me, and I would have to go across state lines to Rhode Island, of all places, Rhode Island, to see it in IMAX 70 millimeters. So
Oh, right, because is it the Providence Mall has
yeah, which
has
I
it?
have not looked at the Odyssey. I remember for Oppenheimer, it was like even the daytime screenings for months were sold out. So, it's
Yeah,
crazy down there.
that's yeah. I was gonna say Letterbox. This is kind of cruel because tickets are booked like for the next month at least in my
Yeah.
theater. Like if unless you want to sit in the front row by yourself, it's basically even like the 2 a.m. or the 7 a.m. or what all the
Oh.
weird times. Everything's booked up because I think my husband John was a very good husband and let me go see this twice and has not seen it. And the other day he was like, "So what is it going to take for me? Like, when am I going to be able to see this movie in the 70 millimeter IMAX?" And I was like, "Next month, maybe. I don't know."
Clear your
Um,
October, sir.
yeah, but that's the good thing is that I think this movie has gotten such a positive response. People are so excited about the different formats and stuff that like I'm pretty sure this is going to be in theaters at least through the holidays. You know what I mean? Like this is going to have a really really long run. And I
And
think every
even
time
without an awards run, I think you're
yeah.
right. Like it'll be available and it will keep coming back around at least through. And I mean, Spider-Man is the next major release, and I think they've already resigned themselves to the fact they're not getting the IMAX screens. I think they'll take the Dolby and the other Infinity Vision type
Oh,
screens,
that's right.
but I think the Odyssey is going to last a long time at some of these venues.
I think basically they're gonna keep bringing it back whenever there's not a movie that makes sense on IMAX. If that, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
absolutely.
it seems like the logical move because there's so much demand. I mean, the same thing kind of happened with Oppenheimer, right? Like it had like a second run at least. I don't remember now,
Yeah,
but
definitely. And Sinners, they brought it back a couple times
mhm,
last year when there was kind of nothing in the fall for those big screens. So, yeah.
amazing. We just kind of like spoiled part of our recommendation algorithm, but let's back up a little bit and just go with the short take, Greg. And you're a very special person from whom we can get a perspective because you are in my life the expert on the Odyssey, the written text, and you wrote an amazing Substack that was very helpful as like a primer, like a cheat sheet for like if you don't have time to actually read the Odyssey but you want to know about what it is and what the differences might be with the movie. It was really really helpful. So thank you for writing that.
Oh, of course. Thank you for reading it and plugging it. I am shocked I got a couple things very, very right and then a couple things completely wrong, but we won't talk about those things. So my short take is this is an astoundingly good film. I don't think there are enough superlatives that I can throw at this, but the kind of base level I was at is I went into this with extremely high hopes because of my deep love of the Odyssey, and I came away having seen a film that was true to the poem in almost every single way. Like there are some changes, but things that made sense to kind of play with and change around and adapt in different ways. Um, and so I found a very true adaptation, and then a total inversion of that poem in some ways that made it feel like deeply important and relevant to today, which I think is an amazing magic trick. I think there are going to be huge numbers of fans who either have a vague memory of the poem or don't have an experience with the poem, maybe just know it from pop culture, who just are astounded by like how relevant and alive this ancient text seems. So, I this is not one of my hype draft movies. I believe it's yours, right? Or are you
Yep.
Dune? No,
Number one draft
you
pick.
have the Odyssey. And so I wanted to be kind of a cool customer, but it's impossible. Like this is so far and seemingly period, the movie of the year to see. And I think it's foolish for people not to try to see this on the big screen, because everything about the big screen experience matters. And I do mean that whatever format you see. Like, I think, again, I'm not in a place where I can see 70 millimeter IMAX. I saw regular IMAX and I saw Dolby. Both of them set off the little alert on my watch. Do you have an Apple Watch where it's like, you're in a dangerously loud environment,
no.
like 30 minutes or more and you'll have hearing loss or damage, and it set it off a couple times because it's big and it's loud. I think my AMC, they've dialed everything up, and it's incredible. I saw it once with this guy named PT, which was amazing that he and I got to go to the movies together. He took me to Kelly's Roast Beef, a New England tradition. His treat, mind you. So people, get PT to go to the movies with you. He'll buy you dinner. That's a long take review promise. Whoever gets PT to go to the movies with him, he will buy dinner for. And then we enjoyed the movie together. We tried not to talk too much about it. And then my second viewing, I pushed the boundaries of what's acceptable parenting to take my son to it. And he absolutely loved it, and has been eating up books of mythology and podcasts about Greek myths since we got home. Only thing that scarred him was the trailer for Other Mommy, which I was informed by my wife last night. He has said is haunting him, and he doesn't know if he can sleep because of what he saw in that trailer. But loved the Odyssey. Thought the Odyssey was fantastic.
He's going to be on a podcast 30 years from now talking about that. So good job. In the way that we talk about, like the way that I talk about the heart-pulling scene in Temple of Doom. That's going to be his version. He's going to be like, my dad took me to see the Odyssey, but really this trailer for Other Mommy scarred me for life. Oh man, that's great. Well done. But
what did you think?
I'm not going to be too exciting in terms of contrasting what you just said. This movie really is undeniable. There's only been handful of times where in the middle of watching a movie, I kind of like have an out of body experience where I'm like meta thinking, this movie's really good. I'm watching a really good movie right now. I cannot believe it. The other time this happened the most was when I watched Dune Part 1. I think it didn't happen with Dune Part 2 because I already expected it to sort of follow suit. But it's like a weird feeling where it's like your brain stops paying attention for a split second and you're like, this is great. Like, I can't believe this is great. So that was definitely my experience watching this. And I am not as familiar with I'm sure I've read parts of the Odyssey when I was younger. And it's hard to be a literature major and not have had to read at least parts of the Odyssey. But it's been so long that like I'm not going to claim that I remember anything from the text itself necessarily, other than the kind of sort of, like you said, the pop culture touchstones that kind of seeped into our consciousness. But I would say that this was like so much more real. I mean, I guess I should expect that from Christopher Nolan, but to me, the degree to which a story like this was grounded in realism seemed astounding to me. And that was the thing that I was gobsmacked by the most. And like, it wasn't, because again, it's Christopher Nolan. This is the director that brought us The Dark Knight. So I wasn't necessarily expecting like a fanciful, like whimsical, really stylized, like a colorful version of the story. But it really was amazing how much everything looked just so real and felt so real, and sort of invited you to just be immersed in the story. And I think that's its greatest superpower, is it just really draws you in. There's a lot more horror. I guess we're getting into recommendation algorithm now, but like there's a lot more horror notes in this, I would say, than I expected. And I think that wasn't I would say that's very much a positive thing, and sort of kind of lends itself to this realism thing. But my last thing for short take, and then we will actually shift into recommendation algorithm, is like, I felt like you did that this was like a perfectly calibrated modernization of the story, but also the themes come through so clearly and strongly. And that was really the thing I wasn't expecting to be walloped by, you know what I mean? Like emotionally, like it was like, and actually I don't think I cried. The volume of tears was not as much as during Disclosure Day. That might've been just whatever was going on with me the day I saw Disclosure Day, honestly. I had a similar feeling where I felt like Christopher Nolan was reaching out and saying, I know how you feel right now in this contemporary moment. Let me put that on screen. And it was so powerful. And there's so much more we could talk about, and we will talk about, and then we will talk about again with PT in another episode. But we'll leave it there for now. So the recommendation algorithm, maybe this is silly. I'll play the music anyway. This is where we usually establish the audience of a film. Should just everybody be seeing this movie? Is everyone already seeing this movie? Like, is there a point to this category? I guess for me, it's like, if someone's like really out on Christopher Nolan, I don't know if I recommend this because it's doing a lot of Christopher Nolan-y things. But what do you think, Greg?
I mean, it was funny because I saw a couple, like a man and a woman, walk out of my theater like halfway through, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, who are these people that could possibly walk out?" Like, I don't understand if from whatever you've seen ahead of time, you are getting exactly what you thought you would get. It is a pretty straight adaptation of the Odyssey, kind of classic sword and sandal epic. And then the couple came back. So I think they just both took the same pee break is what it came down to. So I was like, oh,
solidarity.
Thank God. like you're fine. My wife and I, coming soon to Long Take Review is our episode on The Invite. And we actually did have a bunch of people walk out of our Invite screening when things got a little tense. So I was just like primed to be like, who's leaving this? Who's walking out of this? So I was gonna, I completely agree. Like, I think you have to be pretty in on Nolan, but it might also appeal to you if you're not into Nolan. This will definitely be a richer text if you come into it knowing all of your Nolan films and things. Like, I thought this very closely works with Oppenheimer in particular, which is probably my number 2 Nolan film. I don't know. I haven't done a full mental ranking, but so I would tie it to his filmography, and you'll see a lot of those same themes coming through as a part. And the other movie I found myself thinking a lot about in the aftermath of seeing the Odyssey was One Battle After Another. That I think there's this kind of this animus to both of them that, like you were alluding to, kind of speaks to the moment and how it feels to be alive right now. And, that may be the extent of it, but that's a kind of a deeper level than like, oh, they both have this kind of element to it. And the third thing I was thinking about, which is maybe just I'm looking for help understanding where I am right now, is I was thinking of your quite excellent review of the finale of Andor and what Andor meant as a work of art about interpreting the now and the feelings as we watch what's happening around us. And I kind of felt that same kind of spirit there. So, and like, make no mistake, I'm listing like the top pieces of art of the last 2 years in my book, but that's a lot of where my head was at when I watched the Odyssey.
It's also just so special to see, and we talked about this when we talked about Spielberg a little bit too, the idea that like that's like someone is so clearly an auteur when they have certain things that that are clearly on their mind in every film, and that they're trying to actively work through with every film, and you can sort of see that progression taking place. And I do feel like this is kind of a magnum opus in that sense, where it's like, it seems like a culmination. I see, like, you could list almost any Christopher Nolan movie and I could tell you where I see that manifesting in this one. And that's so, it's just, not only is that fun as a viewer to be able to like hold that in your head and be like, oh wow, like there's Batman and there's Oppenheimer and there, like, and there's Inception and but it's just also really special just to see a director at the height of his powers. Like, how cool is it that we are living through Nolan, like, cresting in this way?
Well, really cool. and I would even say cresting a second time, because that's what Oppenheimer felt like. It was like, wow, he's really pulled it all together. He's done the absolute peak of filmmaking. He will never be better than this. And 3 years later, it's like, all right, let's talk about more awards, more accolades, because I am already out on the limb. I have not said this like into a microphone yet, but this is by far my favorite Nolan movie. Like, I enjoy a lot of his previous filmography. Like I said, I think Oppenheimer would have been my favorite before this, but my connection to the film, to the poem, and to the quality of this experience. Like, I'm sure like there's some recency bias, but it's like I don't see any like sorry young folk, Interstellar ain't as good as this movie. This movie is far beyond Interstellar. I'm a Tenet defender. I saw Tenet on the big screen like 2 years ago and I was like, this film rocks. I don't know what people's problems was at the time. Maybe they just didn't want to go outside. But I do think that this is, like you said, this is all me just like saying, yes, Jen, he is cresting because he is. And it's incredible. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to say he can't top this, but I'm sure I said that after Oppenheimer. So
right. Yeah, that makes it extra incredible because he already had such a huge success and it feels like he did it, right? He won a bunch of Oscars. This was his crowning achievement. Where could he possibly go from here? And it's like, nope, he didn't just like sit back and say like, let me do a smaller movie after Oppenheimer, right? Like he decided to do this and it's incredible. So the other thing I would say is like, if you are a stickler for historical accuracy, just be prepared that some things might make you mad. I wasn't bothered by any of it. I sort of expect, like, if you've seen any of the marketing materials for this movie, you should know that it's like the aesthetic of it is a certain style and is not necessarily, that's not what I'm talking about when I said this is grounded in realism. It's more like takes the thought project of like, if all the fantastical and mythical things that happen in the Odyssey were to happen in real life, how would that work and what would it look like? As opposed to like the togas look like they exactly like they did back thousands of years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would yes and that comment by saying it's a myth, right? And it's like based in reality, but this is a story being told using the tools of today, and that includes the language, the costumes. We're not going to engage with the kind of toxic parts of the internet that object to the casting, but I think it is fair to like look at Agamemnon's armor and be like, that doesn't make sense for that time period, right? But you're right that it's like, I care so much more that he looks like that and inspires awe in the story and in the other characters than like, actually hammered bronze can't do that or what have you.
Yeah, my thing sitting there was like, that looks cool.
Yeah.
And really tells us a lot about the character.
Well, and I know you're really worried, Jen, but don't worry because Elon Musk, according to Variety, has announced that the Grok AI will come out with its own historically accurate version of the Odyssey by the end of the year to compete for awards. So you're covered.
Can't wait to see that.
Of course, he means the toxic parts of this movie that are not accurate to him, not the parts you are questioning.
All right. So do we have anything else to say about, I feel like we covered format, so I don't know if we need to say anything more about that.
I mean, we can't bang this drum enough times in the year, but go to the theater. It's worth it. It's worth paying the money for whatever format you can get into. You know, there's not a bad way to see it. There's, you know, I think this like akin to the first Avatar, this will be one you want to say, I saw it in the theater and I saw it big and loud. But I kind of agree with what you said before. This isn't going to be your only chance. Like this is now going to enter the repertoire where every few years, I just feel like, right? Like,
yeah,
I've been able to see all the Nolan movies on the big screen eventually, even though I missed some the first time. So I think this will just be repertory after this. But you're right. I should calm down.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say to kind of wrap this section up is like, just see it wherever and however you can in a theater, right? You often say this, like just find the biggest, loudest, like the highest quality that's reasonable for you to go to, right?
Yeah.
And then worry about collecting, apparently, on Letterboxd all the other formats later. This has really broken my brain. I'm like, oh, I gotta get on this. Like, but there are more 70 millimeter IMAX screens than there were for Oppenheimer. I don't know the exact numbers, but it went from like 12 or 15 to like 20. So, we are trending that it's more accessible potentially. But I would just say, just go see it and then go see it again in another format if you want to, and then you can compare, and it'll be really fun. To me, also, this was like a great communal theater experience because of both of my screenings were absolutely sold out, packed. But you could hear the audience reacting, which was really fun. But a little bit different. I went to a Wednesday at 2 p.m. screening, and it was like a lot of like big bro energy, like in the sense that there was a lot of cheering for like the more heroic moments in the movie, and especially in the third act. There were a lot of people being like, "Let's go," just like very loudly in the theater. And when certain characters, certain things happen to certain characters, people like clapping and stuff like that. Whereas my second screening was a little bit more like people gasping, and like not as like vocal, but definitely you could still hear and share their reaction. So that's a really special thing too.
Absolutely.
All right, I think we're ready for spoiler mode. If you have not seen the Odyssey, we just said it's okay. Just see it how you can and when you can, and then rejoin us for the rest of the conversation. Okay. First, to get the biggest spoiler out of the way, I'm kidding, I'm being sarcastic. Spoiler, Odysseus makes it home. The spoilers are weird for this because the story is so old, but again, like I think it's fair if it's like the version of like things that happen in this version still count as spoilers to me, like if you haven't seen it.
The things I wouldn't have wanted spoiled are mostly like visual things. Like I wanted to see the Cyclops in context first, right? But you're right. If there are spoilers that people are sensitive to, I think it's the adaptation spoilers, like what,
right, as opposed to
how things get reinterpreted and stuff. More than, yes, he makes it home. Whole bunch of suitors die. The end.
Well, and that's like I think. I want to say Sean Fennessy was saying this on The Big Picture, but like that's the astounding thing about it too, is if you step back and think about, I'm still holding my breath and on the edge of my seat for so much of this movie, even though I know exactly what the plot is already.
Yeah.
So great.
Unbelievable achievement. Wonderful.
Yeah. There are certain scenes where I was just like, what is going, like, even though my brain knows what's supposed to happen next, like I'm like, what is going to happen? like how is this possibly going to unfold? I guess maybe I'll ask you, what was the scene that took your breath away the most, do you think?
So I will say the scene that got the biggest reaction from me, to reframe the question. The first time so my example a moment ago was true, which is that when the Cyclops is revealed, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen the Cyclops interpreted that way, that essentially he is kind of deformed in that, I've never even seen the eye sideways, but it's almost like his whole face was twisted as a kind of birth defect almost. And so I was like, I've never seen anything like that for the Cyclops. It's always just, an eye painted on the forehead of an actor with their eyes covered up. So I was like,
yes,
that was my first, like, okay.
Like a big googly eye.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Like, this is going to be special. And then the first sequence that really, I was like, oh my God, what am I watching? Was Cersei. And the way Cersei grabs the men and, like they are clay on a wheel, just starts actively reshaping them to be pigs. And I assume this is what you were alluding to among the horror elements, because that was the one I warned my son. I was like, just be aware when we get to Cersei, it's a little gnarly. Like it's a pretty scary thing. And, told him it's all fake and you can shut your eyes. But like, I was like, that knocked me out. And then, and then we'll save the big one. But then the biggest one, the one that really took my breath away, was Odysseus talking to Penelope and recounting the Trojan War, which to me is the biggest leap in the adaptation and the biggest change. And it was like, I never thought that was coming. I didn't know how it was. You could have spoiled that for me, and I wasn't. I was in there cold, and it was like, of course, and that is today, and that's how you make it. So I think we should talk about that moment kind of all in its own as a thing. But what are some of the moments that stood out for you more generally?
Part of me was like, I'm so glad this podcast and you and Sarah and PT and everyone has been trying to like level up my horror tolerance because I really felt like it paid off here. I was like, oh, because I've watched The Substance and Obsession and all those movies, like I am now prepared to not just shut my eyes and not watch this. But yeah, the Cersei scene to me was the most like, oh, I cannot believe they're doing this. Oh, like I'm looking at it through my fingers, kind of like, oh, and it just looks so good. And again, maybe we should have said this in it before spoiler mode, but like nothing in this is computer generated, and that is insane. Like, because that scene in particular looks like it has to be, but it isn't, and it's just a mess, like amazing magic trick. For me, the scene I'll add to the pile is the sirens. Just because like Matt Damon's performance and the sound work during that scene, it's so smart and so powerful. And the screenplay, to me, that's like the best written, is the Matt Damon voiceover monologue during that scene, talking about like where he's describing what the sirens sounded like to him and what it meant to him to hear it, and all, and tying it into like his character arc about like all the promises I couldn't keep, his regret, like all that stuff. It was just so beautiful. So that was probably the scene that I found the most powerful from a filmmaking perspective. But the most tense were Cyclops and Cersei's are the most like, you're like, like what is happening? Also the Hades, the Tiresias.
Oh yeah.
Scene.
Yeah.
Oh, like where they're scooping up the really dark blood from the dish, and like, oh, so creepy.
And that's all exactly as it is in the poem. So I'd seen the last time I actually listened to the poem in late May, early June. And I think I made this recommendation in my blog, but if people are not up for reading the Odyssey, there is not the new hot Emily Wilson translation, which is what everybody's reading, but the last major translation, which is the Fagles. There's an audiobook of Ian McKellen reading, and it just all sounds a little Shakespearean and wonderful because it's Ian McKellen. So highly recommend, if you want to listen to this, that you pick that up. And I had seen the trailers by the time I was listening to that. And so when it got to Hades, I was like, oh, this is the part that looks like Iceland, and that's where they filmed that sequence. And like the way the poem describes them coming out of the ground like ash, I was like, oh my God, I think he nailed it. Like, I think he really did this well. And then the drinking of the blood. The sequence in the poem is longer. They talk to more people. My favorite is there's a guy who falls off Cersei's roof and they just leave him. And he's the first to be like, hey, you just left my body. Like, I fell off the roof and you just left me there. So he gets skipped, and there are some other heroes and such. But so it's streamlined. But yeah, stunning visuals, and the way Tiresias doesn't fully come out of the ground. I'm sure we'll do power ranking of the performances, but the biggest delta between my expectations and what they brought to the film, completely agree about Matt Damon, but I expected it of Matt Damon. So the delta's small. He was awesome, but I didn't expect Elliot Page to be such an important part of this. And then the way that he gets that monologue in the underworld, I was like, oh man, it's so good. It's like, when he kind of spits like, you lied to everyone, why'd you have to lie to me? I was like, lights out. Oof. Like, so good.
And then the way
wonderful.
they intercut, because they intercut flashbacks to what we had already seen earlier too, right? Again, the editing in that scene is insane.
Well, and Matt Damon, Odysseus responding like, I'm sorry, but I was there with you. I was right there. I couldn't make a sound, but I was with you when you died. It was like, oh, come on. That's so good.
I do want to, I think one of the things we kind of thought of that is for the topic for today, part 1 of 2, is to kind of really focus on the adaptation and how the adaptation is different, what Nolan decided to update or change. The thing I wanted to start with, and then we will do the official rhetorical situation, is the scene towards the end where Odysseus, because I think it's Odysseus telling Penelope about what really happened, or like why he didn't want to come home, basically, right? And it's the redo of the sacking of Troy, where they show the kind of more brutal version. And correct me if I'm wrong about any of that. And they show Zendaya's Athena intercut with the chopping of the statue. One of the soldiers cuts the head off of the Athena statue in Troy. I think I was trying to think of what's going to be the most helpful for people who are fresh off the movie and are like, what does it all mean? And that's the first thing I think of, because it goes by so fast, and like it clearly is important and means something, but I think it's not apparent, like it's not obvious what the exact interpretation you're supposed to have of that is. So like, I want to hear from you, Greg, especially as someone who knows the text so well, like, what is going on in that scene? Like, is it actually Athena? Is it that Athena is manifesting and comes to Odysseus throughout the film as this other woman from Troy who got killed? Like, what is your take on that scene?
So you just asked me, is it A or B, right? Essentially. And my answer is, I don't think there's an answer.
Right.
And
Okay.
this gets into, I think you're absolutely right to open this up as the question, because this to me gets into the biggest leap that maybe is what Christopher Nolan did in his adaptation, which is the poem is entirely unambiguous that this is a realm with gods and goddesses. And I think the film is completely ambivalent on whether there are gods and goddesses here. So the opening title card, beautiful, says in a time of apparent magic.
Word choice. So important.
Like so good. And there you go. Like that's the prestige. That, like what you were saying before, it's all of it kind of folded back in on itself, like Inception. And so I think there's a real question of interpretation here. If you want to believe that the gods and gods are shaping everything that happens in this movie like they are in the poem, you can believe that. And if you want to believe, as your opening thing suggested, this is just realism, this is just real life happening, there is completely a reading of that is there are no gods here. And to me, what's so, I'm just trying so hard not to guess, parental warning, but what is so effing brilliant about that is that's what religion is, right? Religion is what you choose to believe in and whether you interpret those. And Athena's first bit of dialogue is like, Odysseus says, "Why can't the gods speak to us clearly?" And Athena responds, like, "Do you not sense the godliness in the thunder, in the laughter of a
What can be
child?"
clearer than thunder and fire and pain and death and war? So good.
So, to your question, I will say I interpret Zendaya in this film. I see her much more as Odysseus's trauma made manifest, and he saw the brutal beheading of this slave girl, unnamed slave girl, and that became the representation of the fall of Troy and all the brutality that he confesses he let into this world, which is the other super brilliant new adaptation thing. And so he is haunted by her memory, and it is not until he confesses it to Penelope that he rids himself of that trauma. Now, I think you would be free to say that is actually the goddess Athena there taking a visage to inspire that. I think you could also make a pretty good ghost story take, right? Like that this is just an actual spirit haunting him. This is a world of spirits, one would say. Or you could take the take that it's all in your head, right? What does Dumbledore say in the last Harry Potter? Like, just because it all happened in your head, what makes you think
doesn't
it wasn't
make it
real?
Not real.
Yeah. So I don't know the answer to your question, and that's a total dodge. How did you react, like in the moment, or have you had to process what you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, my interpretation of it has evolved with each watch. So the first time, again, because it goes by so quickly, and to me, in terms of just like the continuity of the editing, it really feels like they're saying, to me, my first interpretation was, these soldiers are desecrating Athena's statue. And so Nolan is trying to visualize that by taking the actress we've seen as Athena throughout the movie. And it's like, you're not just beheading the statue, you're actually beheading her. And I sort of thought of it initially in reverse order, where I was like, oh, okay, like this is just to make the brutality of desecrating that statue more visually visible. And also like Athena being the goddess of wisdom and war, right? Seems really essential that even if you're doing the more secular reading of this is like all of Odysseus' psychology visualized, right? Still, like the idea that he is going through this realization and coming to terms and accepting what he had done and the consequences of what he had done by making the Trojan horse and coming up with that idea, that Athena would be the right goddess to like help him help guide him through that arc, right? And so like so I don't think it has to be literal. Like I agree with I like your idea of like it doesn't have to be one thing, right?
Yeah.
But my second viewing, it did feel a lot more like the opposite, and this seems to be predominantly what the internet interprets it as, is that Zendaya actually was this girl, like a just like an average citizen or a slave girl or something like that in Troy, and that he in that moment then associates the image of her and the memory of seeing her beheaded as Athena, right? Like that's
Mhm.
it's like the haunting factor. So, but to me, I like the idea that Athena as a goddess is real in this movie, and confession, right, or disclaimer, like I named my daughter Athena. I
I
don't
know.
mention her
I
name.
kept thinking about her.
I don't mention her name a whole lot on the show, just like for like I don't know, the same way that you try to keep, like if for when people try to keep images of their kids off social media, it just feels like a good idea to like not mention her name a lot. But this, it seems like unavoidable. Like I have to I have to disclose this. And so like I like the idea that she is real, because it also fuels the Penelope storyline because of the pin.
Mm.
And because of Telemachus being like, oh, you have wise eyes, Athena's eyes, right? And so to me, it thematically is a lot more cohesive if Athena is an actual like presence, like a god, like a goddess that is present in the story, and not just like a completely like a manifestation of the psychological state of Odysseus, if that makes sense. I prefer that reading of it.
Well, and I will add to that reading with whenever Telemachus says that, and I really tried to clock it in my second viewing, it is times where if it were the poem, he is actually seeing Athena.
Ah,
So
yes.
he says it to the beggar at the very, very beginning, the first beggar to come. And then he says it to Mentor as they board the ship to Sparta. And then I think he says it to Odysseus, and Odysseus rejects it. That's that one I'm not as strong in my memory of, but I think
Mm-hmm.
at that point Odysseus is supposed to be disguised. When he returns, it's not just that he has a cloak on, it's that he gets kind of physically masked by Athena as a
Right.
way
He
of
gets a little
protecting
extra
him.
disguise juice.
Yeah,
Like a
yeah.
magical disguise juice. Yeah.
And
Not
so
literal
I
juice.
think
I don't mean that. I just mean like he's helped by. So there's a bunch of people on the internet being like, why would no one recognize him? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like you're totally missing the point here. But yes, you're right. Like in the book, in the text, it's that he's there's an illusion that Athena has given him or helped him with, right? That
yep.
allows people to not recognize him initially.
And so I think, if Telemachus could watch this film and report on it, he'd be like, yep, those were all Athena. Like, now I understand that Athena came here. And again, to me, that what's so powerful is that like the faith and the religion exists within the reality of the story without the kind of modern being like, well, all the gods are fake and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't think you meet a lot of like Athena worshipers in the modern day, but like like, and my favorite conversation I've had about this movie so far, sorry PT, is with my son Henry, and like he was like, well, kind of like, why do you like this stuff? And I was like, because to me the power of Homer is that it proves that we are all the same, that those people were ancient and they were asking the same big questions about humanity, which is what we are still asking today, the things we don't know and the things we want to understand. And I do feel like this ambiguity is a way to draw us closer to them. It erases the millennia between us, because we're just trying to figure it out. We're just trying to answer those same questions. And what do we have to do that with except the stories we tell each other? And then this participates as a new telling of that story. So I thought it was pretty brilliant. I think you would have to give me another viewing, but I think if you track the thunder always happens at moments in the poem where Zeus is watching. But again, that, one moment in the film is as the suitors come in for Penelope's
Right.
contest, the thunder rumbles and one of the suitors is like, I guess Zeus is interested in what's going on. And I think that's literally true in the poem. And again, you could build this really interesting reading of like, oh, so it is true in the poem because Homer, invented it because he heard that happened when it was there. And so it could have just been one of those signs. So it's like, I don't know, there's like a gold leaf metaphor in this. Like the more you layer and layer the thin layers together, the stronger it gets because it's all just the story that we have. I love that about this adaptation in the Odyssey in general is it's the more metatextual you get, the like more rewarding it is, and it just keeps working all the way through.
Yeah. The first beggar says something like, "Well, the thunder was just luck," and Telemachus is like, "I don't know, man. It seemed good to me." And then the thing you were talking about earlier at the end, when Telemachus says, "You have Athena's eyes" to Odysseus in disguise, he doesn't yet know it's him. I think Odysseus' response is, "Don't look for the gods in men; you'll always be disappointed."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's also really interesting that like Odysseus as a character has this perspective of like he kind of is like Han Solo in Star Wars, where he's like, oh, his hokey religion, like
yeah, and that the way that conflict works with his men is really effective.
Yeah, he's like, your gods. He says something to I can't remember Himesh Patel's actual name. I'm sorry. It starts with
Eurylochus, I think.
Yeah. Because Eumaeus is John Leguizamo and Eurylochus is Himesh Patel. Okay.
I think that's
right. Yeah, he says your gods. Like, I don't, like, almost like he doesn't believe in them, which is really interesting because he's the one who seems to be going through a lot of stuff with gods.
Okay, so I'm going to hammer another gold leaf on that interpretation. Mm-hmm. What's so brilliant then is the Odysseus that's in the story not believing, I'm going to put it in Milton terms, he's fallen. Right? He's had his epiphany. Yeah. The scales have fallen from his eyes in Troy. So if the kind of rupture point in the Odysseus story is seeing the brutality of Troy, which the Iliad is very clear, there's way more brutal things going on. Like this is a pretty sanitized fall of Troy. We know Hector's son, for example, the infant child gets thrown from the wall, right? Like,
right. Yes.
We could have gone very R-rated.
We should have done a parental warning and recommendation algorithm. I just
Sorry,
realized.
Children. But if Odysseus is fallen, then you're right. He is Han Solo. But he's more like Baze, right? Like he used to believe, but then he's had his revelation. Yeah. And so he doesn't believe anymore. And so all those times when he says he's like, I'm going to defy the gods or I don't believe you, it's him cynically saying the world has fallen. And I guess he's right because the Xenia has been, not Zendaya, but Xenia, the word for Greek hospitality and Zeus's law has been violated. And so this is a fallen state, a fallen society. And so when he says to Telemachus, don't look for the gods and men, maybe there are no more gods and men, right? Like it's a fallen world now.
Right, because he wrought this new world. Yeah. Whew. All right.
He blew up the atomic bomb, right? That's to me why this is Oppenheimer remixed, yes. Right? So, is it's very much the same story.
Jon Stewart, when he was interviewing Christopher Nolan, I've seen so many interview videos at this point, they're all blending together. But he said a super smart thing where he said, I think it was Christopher Nolan. Yeah. He said a super smart thing to Christopher Nolan where he's like, I was thinking so much about Oppenheimer when I was watching the Odyssey, and I was like, me too, Jon Stewart. And
celebrities, they're just like us.
Yeah. And he said, and I see, and this is the part that I didn't think of, because to me, I was like, oh, like we're seeing the same themes in Oppenheimer of the smartest man in the room achieve something no one else could, but it has to deal with the consequences and feel and reckon with the guilt of how he has changed the world forever, right? Like that is where Oppenheimer and Odysseus overlap. But Jon Stewart went one step further and he was like, I see the Odyssey as the sequel to Oppenheimer, because Oppenheimer is all about making the smart achievement, like being the genius. And then a little bit at the end is like, guess what? Now you have to deal with the consequences. And he said, the Odyssey focuses a lot more on how do you pick up the pieces and reckon with what you have done, and how do you live in the new world that you are responsible for, and the arc that Odysseus goes on, where he goes from not wanting to go home, not wanting to face what he's done, to accepting it and admitting it, and then also relinquishing control, right? Because what's so powerful about when he leaves Calypso's island is that she's like, you are a man who wants to control his fate. You cannot control this. And you have to give in. You have to give yourself over and just let your fate unfold. And that's when he's able to go home, right? So like, it's so interesting how it's like when the second Jon Stewart said that, I'm like, oh, you're right. Like it is a continuation. It's like Odysseus is sort of picking up where Oppenheimer would have left off, and then continues his like sort of psychological journey.
I love that. No, I completely agree that's very smart. Don't give credit to Jon Stewart. Say you just figured it out. And
I like to cite my sources, Greg. I don't know about you.
And like to that point, like while we don't get the revelation of Troy until very late in the film, it has all transpired beforehand, before the start of this narrative. It's prologue, which I like a lot. And I think you're right that Oppenheimer builds up to the revelation, and this is instead, the fallout, as you will. I do like there was an interview. Oh, I heard Matt Damon on Amy Poehler, which is just fantastic, especially if you're from Boston, to hear the two of them chatting it up. And Matt Damon talked about how, like, when he shot this, he was like, I was totally involved in the fatherhood aspects. Like, I understood that this was like being a father and trying to protect, and then realizing you can't protect, you can only lead by example, and all these, like, you can't control these things. So what are you going to do with the lack of control? And he said he was having this conversation with the crew member, and the crew member was a veteran. And he's like, oh no, that's not how I experienced this at all. We're telling the greatest PTSD story that's ever told, right? That like this is all about coming home and figuring out the world around you, which actually in both those, I read that Oppenheimer sequel analogy. So I think the fact that, the Odyssey is the Odyssey because we can all look at it and find some different interpretation. But the way in which Nolan seems to have adapted it to honor all of these, and I will go back to your initial question. It's in the ambiguity, which I don't know about when you teach, but every time I teach, students hate ambiguous text. They're like, well, what was the point of that? Like, it didn't tell me the answer. And I don't get to teach a lot of literature, but even with a short story, they're like, what was the point? And I try to like you have to recognize, dear students, that like if they've left it ambiguous, that is a choice, right? That they could have given you the answer, but they didn't choose to do so. So why didn't they? And how would you build that? And what can you get out of the ambiguity? But I think here the ambiguity is its secret power, that we are left to interpret it how we choose. And brilliant.
It's the spinning top at the end of Inception, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Which is also kind of the ring, right? The ring looked a lot like the top.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It did.
So yeah, absolutely.
All right, we got to go into rhetorical situation because we're already talking about what I wanted to talk about in there. No, it's good, and this will formalize it hopefully a little bit more. So the rhetorical situation is a segment in which we look at a film through the lens of our academic experience. So all four of our regular co-hosts all of our regular co-hosts are writing professors. We like to.
We've got plans in the works, listeners.
Yeah. There'll be a cameo. He'll have a Lupita Nyong'o sized role in our future. So we like to have this section of the episode dedicated to making connections to our experience as scholars and teachers. In the teaching of writing, the rhetorical situation refers to any contextual factors that influence composing and interpretation. So the main thing I want to talk about here, which we've already started talking about, is this idea of adaptation and taking one of the oldest stories ever told and making a film that can resonate, as we said in our short take, like it resonates so much with audiences in 2026. To you, Greg, as the resident Odyssey expert, like what'd you say is the biggest change that Nolan enacted here in adapting? And then what do you feel like in what ways is this version of the Odyssey a contemporary version, for like the version for now, basically, as we've been talking about?
Well, and I just want to acknowledge in the framing of the question as well. There was a story this morning on Variety. Listeners, can you tell I was stuck in the waiting room at a car dealership and maybe cruise the internet way more than I usually do? But there's a story this morning that Spotify is already out with numbers showing that Gen Z is flocking to the audiobook of the Odyssey. So the streaming numbers on the audiobook are way up, which makes me really excited that this would turn people back towards the text, and particularly young people. And it's well documented that just reading is out of fashion in some regard. So that's really exciting. So to me, this goes back to the biggest shock. So to me, it's the moment late in the text when Odysseus is on one side of the screen. Sidebar, that screen device was brilliant. I don't believe that's in the poem, but the way Penelope exists behind a screen, present but not present, the way Odysseus is present but not present in the hall is wonderful. And when they speak to each other, and it is Odysseus taking ownership of the Trojan horse as the thing that has broken this world. To my best knowledge, I have never heard this read this way. I have never heard this interpreted this way. Odysseus is defined in most translations. There's a Greek word that I'm going to forget, but it essentially means many ways. And people struggle with how to interpret that word or translate that word, poly something. And it's often cleverness, or it's like he of many ways. It could be that he's lying. Emily Wilson, I believe, goes with complicated. He's a complicated man. But Odysseus is always defined by that act of the Trojan horse and his cleverness and the way he can come up with a strategy to get out of these situations. And when you take that final monologue, or it's not the final monologue, but that you take that big monologue where he tells the story of Troy and he completely inverts our history. We have always known him to be polytropos. Thanks, Jen. You're nailing it. Polytropos, which I believe is where we also get the word trope, right? One way would be a trope. Sense. And polytropos is many ways. He of many ways. So he takes his defining heroism that we've always known. He's a great big bad hero because he's the cleverest, right? He doesn't stand out as the strongest fighter. That's Achilles, a swift-footed Achilles. He doesn't stand out as the most respected leader. That's Agamemnon, although he's problematic. He is just the clever one. And it turns out that his cleverness broke the world. And all that is befalling this and causing a great new dark age is his fault in his interpretation of those events. I've never heard it explained that way. And I found it absolutely gobsmackingly beautiful as a understanding of our modern world. And we don't get too political on this show, and we don't want to because we don't want to offend any listeners, but it feels to me like a reading of our present moment is we've broken this world, right? Like we are in a fallen state, and how we got there is by accepting lies, right? And I'm really, truly, listeners, there's one, side of the political spectrum that gets charged with this much more easily, but it's all of us. We understood this world differently when we accepted the lies that made us comfortable. And that's where you get back to polytropos, because polytropos can be lying, and it can be simply accepting the different realities and ignoring facts in order to do so. And to me, that is the great sin of our age. That's the atomic bomb for the 40s. It's us accepting that, well, I don't have to worry about the facts that don't match up. I don't have to care about those people who don't match my understanding. And the fact that we accepted that means that we are headed into a dark age. And I think this is such a bitter warning that we brought this upon ourselves, just like Odysseus brought this on ourselves. When we accepted cruelty and lies from our politicians, from each other, from the world at large, we broke this society. And I think that's kind of devastating, but I'm an elder millennial. My lifetime has been defined by this kind of cruelty and lies and politicians that almost to a person always let us down eventually. Feels pretty real to this moment, and feels pretty real in a way that makes me feel hopeless. But then the final gesture of the film is to say, we can choose another way. right? And Odysseus's heroism is then defined by, in the wake of having wrought this great harm, he chooses instead to protect his son, to teach his son differently, make sure the son doesn't participate in the violence, say, no, I'll do this slaughter, you don't. And then to cede control of the world, right? To walk away, to exile himself. And in the walking away, he's saying, I mean, I don't want to speak for PT, but based on our car conversation, PT's like, yeah, we don't really let the boomers say my bad and walk away. Like, we should probably hold them a little more accountable for this. But there is a way in which
Right, they don't get
to
retire on a cruise.
Yeah. There's a Viking cruise ship waiting for them to take them into the West. But it is kind of saying, like, that's where, to me, it resonated with One Battle After Another, which is like, we did the best we could with our time. It's over. Good luck. Cue Tom Petty singing American Girl. So that's big stuff to answer your question. But to me, that's like the most innovative, exciting thing here. It's what really did take my breath away in the theater. I was like, oh my God, like, I've read this poem so many times. I've thought about this poem so many times, and I've never heard that interpretation before. And yet I think it's borne out in the text. It's kind of, you can read the text that way. And, so
would you
react to what you will.
Would you say that in the original text that Odysseus's actions across the board it's not even just that they're not complicated in the way that they are in this movie, but that they are valorized, right? Like that he's just straight up, like, he does some bad, we interpret some of his actions as bad, but that kind of contemporaneously at the time of Homer, it would have been like, yep, he's a great hero. He did all this great stuff and conquered all these places and made it home. You know what I mean? Right? Like, it's much more, all of his actions, violent or not, are often in the text present, or you could read the original text as him just being uncomplicatedly a hero, right?
I think that's fair. The hesitation in my voice, because I would go, my number 2 biggest adaptation here is, I do think Odysseus is very sanitized here, across the board. Both, he doesn't do the violent things in Troy, right? The sequence is he's really just walking around.
He's just kind of walking around.
Just like checking out what's going on while this is all happening around him. He doesn't sleep with Cersei for a year, which, like, once that issue is resolved, he's like, also, you're kind of hot. What if I stayed here for a year and slept with you and was disloyal to my wife? And then the 7 years with Cersei isn't fully like prisoner, right? It's like, oh, gorgeous sea nymph, I should stay here for 7 years. So they sanitize some of those edges on him, I think, to draw out his loyalty to Penelope, which is much more of a modern sensibility. But at the heart of your question too is, like, heroes could just do things that modern audiences would not accept. And so to bring the Iliad in, the Iliad is a conflict because Achilles refuses to fight on the battles of Troy for a short time because Agamemnon has claimed a slave girl from Achilles and hurt Achilles' honor. Even when you watch Troy, you're like, guys, like, this is not a good way. Like, there's no way to make that be like, he's a good guy and just feels bad because his slave that he now owns isn't his, right? And so it's like, none of that would have clocked to the Greeks as, like, he's a bad man for sleeping with this prisoner of war that is now his concubine, right? We even use words like concubine because sex slave doesn't sound so great. And, like, all of that is, like, present in the Odyssey. Like, they are leaving Troy. And there's a little of this in the film that, like, they're rich. They've pillaged the heck out of that city. They have lots of women on the boats, and, like, they're ready to have these slaves forever. And that's just the culture of what warfare looked like at that time. And I think in that sanitizing of Odysseus, like, it makes him much more of a, like, unproblematic hero today. But in the poem, he's also kind of a tool, right? Like, and this is another big change in the Cyclops interlude is the Cyclops, when it happens in the poem, the Cyclops is like, who's in here? And there's this weird pun that works better in Greek where Odysseus says, my name is nobody or no man.
No man,
and so Yeah, and so then like when they eventually stab his eye, the Cyclops is like calling out for help and is essentially like nobody stabbed me, nobody stabbed me, and so doesn't get the help from the other Cyclopes on the island. And then at the last second, Odysseus famously shouts back because he wants the glory. He's a little bit of a tool, and he yells back like, "You're a fool! It is I, Odysseus, son of Laertes, who stabbed
And
you,
then
not
Poseidon's
nobody."
like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and then Poseidon brings the curse on Odysseus, and that's how everything happens. And so again, they're kind of weaving out the magic, but they're also taking out his culpability. Odysseus in the film gets like one last arrow shot, so you kind of get that he's a little bit cocky and bravado, but actually probably his worst character moment, in meaning like he shows
because they're like, oh man, like
character.
why'd you have to go do that? Like they were
Yeah,
like, we were
he's
good,
already hurt.
we were good. Why'd you have to shoot that last arrow?
So I do think you're right that he's been both sanitized. I think the word for it is that he's just been more modernized. Like he's
yes. And so it's so interesting here you talk about this, because I do think it's like we've kind of shuffled around the culpability a little bit, because what I really liked about this adaptation is that, unlike the original text, I think, or would assume, this is a much more post-colonial take, where they're like, oh yeah, showing up on a random foreign shore and being like, we're gonna light all your buildings on fire and take all your food, that's bad. Right. And they and the whole reveal at the end where Penelope Odysseus sort of explains to Penelope, and she is the look on Anne Hathaway's face is incredible. She's so horrified, where she's like, we are the sea people, these people that I've been casting as like, oh, they can't possibly exist, and if they did exist, they aren't us, and so it's not our problem. Kind of like the idea that it's real. The movie is really sort of like modernizing, using modern sensibilities and modern values to kind of look back at the events of the Odyssey and the Trojan War, to be like, no, like, looting and pillaging bad, war bad, right? Like, even if that wasn't the case, the people didn't think that, thousands of years ago. So I like that. But what's interesting is, in the process, in order to do that, I think what you're describing is we sort of end up having to, or I should say Nolan has to sort of split. And I'm thinking very distinctly of the image of Odysseus, the boat breaking, and it's very neatly, he's on one raft or one part of the boat that splits, and then his men are on the other. There's much more of a divide between, no, Odysseus is good and pure and noble. He maybe is a little like arrogant and honestly hypocritical, because I feel like he has, when they're leaving the Cyclops cave, they are like, well, we gotta bury these dead. And he's like, we'll honor them by surviving, right? And he's like, we don't have time for that right now. And then he shoots the arrow at the Cyclops, and then when they get back on the boat, and I'm gonna get wrong now. Eurylochus? No.
Now I'm gonna Eurylochus.
Oh, no. Eurylochus says, like, why did you antagonize the Cyclops more? Like, that just made it a lot harder for us. And his response is, it basically to honor the dead, right? Like, he's like, and he was like, and that's when he gives him the ring, right? And he's like, remember all the men that we couldn't save. And it's like, you were just saying the opposite in the cave. Like, you can leave them here, it's fine. Like, so it's really interesting to see kind of the flaws in his decision making. And then I think the film does a really good job of like showing, but not really commenting on that. No, Odysseus is not perfect. Like, he doesn't, every choice he makes is not necessarily the right one. He's very flawed. But at the same time, like with the stuff that you're talking about, they make it so that he's kind of unimpeachable in terms of his relationship with Penelope, right? So their love story is a lot stronger because he's been faithful. The only time he was not faithful was when he was being drugged and didn't remember what was going on, right? So it's like a convenient excuse. So it's just so fascinating how it's kind of like what looks good and what looks bad, and who's responsible for what, and who is pure and noble versus like a pig, right? Like, the men are the pigs, he is not.
Yeah,
right.
He is
That's
separate,
very
like
distinct in this version. So it's just really interesting how it's been shifted around. And I think you're right. It is all for the sake of being more appealing and digestible and intelligible to modern audiences.
Well said. And then I I then struggle, and this is like a silly struggle for me. The very last thing Odysseus says when he's kind of hammering home the point of it, he says something along the lines of like, I think Penelope, I haven't heard it either of my turn very perfectly clearly, but Penelope says something like, why will they have our songs, or why will they sing songs about us? And he says like, because we can't write it down, and they will forget our flaws, and they will not learn the right lessons. It's along those lines, but it's
Yes. You
trying to
mean the
get the
part that's
way.
about AI, Greg? That's how
But
I interpret it.
yeah, explain that a little bit more.
So the thing he says, I'm not going to get it perfectly, but I think to me the thing that I remember as being so pointed was, she says, "Why songs?" Right? And he's like, "Because that is the best way in dark times, like dark ages, meaning like nobody knows how, all culture and art is lost, right? That is the best way for those who are not literate to remember those who could write." He says something very specific about those who could write.
Yes.
And the idea that like the story is more likely to live on in the future if it's spoken and sung and not written down. Because a book can be burned, right? But a song can carry on through people. He doesn't actually say that. That's me inferring. That's kind of the subtext of that. And so to me, at first, my first viewing, that moment really stuck out. And I was like, did we really have to go history nerd on everybody? Christopher Nolan? Like, that seems like an odd thing for these characters to be saying to each other. Same thing. You could say the same thing about Odysseus earlier in his voiceover being like, and the Bronze Age ended. Right? It feels like a history documentary being narrated by, like, I don't know, who's the guy that did Richard Attenborough? Like, it sounds like something Richard Attenborough or would say in a documentary, and not something these characters would say in a fictional movie. So that was, at first I was like, weird. And then the second viewing, I was like, oh, he is kind of like working out he being Christopher Nolan, working out his anxiety about, like, he really believes we are poised to be illiterate, like, as a society, like that we are going to head into like our version of the Dark Ages, and where no one will read, all art will be lost, right? And that we're going to have to come back from that. And he's very vocal about being anti-AI, especially in the film industry, right? Like, and there's a reason he has no cell phone, right? Or he doesn't have a smartphone. He says he has a flip phone that he uses sometimes. He doesn't have email,
but none on set. Nobody can.
He doesn't have an email. Apparently, people have to print out emails and show when they're important enough. They could, so like, amazing. Someone comes up to him with printed emails, being like, "So we got these emails," and then obviously, a big part of the press tour for this movie is we didn't use any CGI, we didn't use any technology, we just used practical, right? Yeah. Whenever possible, and so like, I do feel like that he put that line in there because he felt like it was really important to be like, no, I'm not talking about like ancient Greece. I'm talking about now. We are on the precipice of the same thing. And the day I saw the movie, there's an article in the Atlantic that came out that was like, the age of reading is over.
Yeah.
And I was like, Christopher Nolan's right. Oh my gosh. What are we going to do?
Well, and I just want to acknowledge that I talked about it a minute ago as being like the arrival of the post-truth age, and you are talking about it as the end of literacy. And those both are true. And that's not even like ambiguity, both are true. It's like they are coupled, right? They are one and the same forces that are attacking us. I think you're absolutely right. And then the and to that, yes, is that that he often within the making of his films is commenting on being a filmmaker. And so while it is the songs, to me it's also like the films, because I think he sees himself within this is like, I make these big spectacle wonderful films and they're really powerful, but is that part of the problem, right? Is he, I mean, I just said maybe he's leading people to read the poem, but like, I think, you can't talk about the lack of literacy and reading today when it's like driven by screen entertainment, right? And engagement in that regard. wither Quibi, but I did also just read an article this week about like the short form video is like back. I think somebody just signed a giant deal to make those for Instagram now, that we're going to get TV shows and stuff produced, and it's attention, right? And I love my friends who have tried to read the Odyssey of late and have tried to enjoy it, but so many have responded like, oh, but I just can't pay attention that long, or I just can't engage with it. And I don't blame my friends. I blame our society in this coming dark age. So I think you're right, and I think it's scary, and it's kind of canary in the coal mine moment where like our best artists and thinkers are telling us like there's a dark age coming. Um, and yet also I just want to also acknowledge your piece about the history documentary. It's like, from what I understand, there is a dark age after Odysseus's time that predates Homer, because remember, Homer is actually much later than Odysseus, despite there being poets in here. And then so this text comes as this is reawakened, but then we get the Middle Ages and we get the Odyssey and the kind of classical Greeks at the forefront of the Renaissance and the rebirth of culture after that. So like, I think if this film is ultimately hopeful, which I think it's trying to be, and I did feel some good hopefulness at the end, I do think it's trying to remind us that like humanity continues. Like it's about to get rough, team, but like we can still conquer this, and we can make a different choice and a different path, right? Yeah.
And to pick up on your one battle after another comparison, I do think one battle to me seems more resigned in the sense of, we did the best we could, now it's up to you. I do think that Nolan has a little bit more of a, no, we have to be like Odysseus and clean up our own house before, and keep and like you said, protect the next generation so that they can be not tainted by what we're doing here, right? That's the whole thing, is like, because Odysseus doesn't necessarily say, I don't want you to fight because like you're too young, or I don't want you to get hurt. Like, he doesn't use any of those sort of more standard parental like save yourself and I'll fight, right, kind of mentality. He specifically says it's like, because you will be exiled. Let me be exiled for you, right? Let me do all of this dirty work, clean up my own mess, put my house in order so that you can be the leader, the like noble and pure leader that should be ruling Ithaca, right? And so that's a little bit different of a model than the one battle after another be like, well, we tried and we did a bunch of drugs and like, I guess hopefully you can do better.
Well, and I would connect to your Letterboxd review and your opening comment that like there is something also about Disclosure Day in this that I think we as the chips have fallen on that movie, although it just hit streaming and I think it's rising in like views again. So I'm interested to see what the second round of discourse on Disclosure Day is. But we ended up very positive on that, whereas I think a lot of people who are on the more negative side are like, you know, Steven Spielberg is like hopelessly naive about what he thinks could happen. And I wonder if there's something different there. Steven Spielberg is 100% a boomer, whereas PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson of One Battle After Another, and Nolan fall in the Gen X category. And PTA's version of being Gen X felt like it was like, we should have done more to have our moment, and we forgot to. Whereas Nolan seems to be like, we need to have our moment before the next generation takes over. And it does feel like the shadow of the boomers there, kind of where we are in the modern day, which is all metatextual, has nothing to do with the Odyssey. And yet somehow I think everybody I've heard commenting on it feels this connection to the now and to the moment we're all in as a society. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that like I'm in awe that he did that with a 2,000-year-old poem. Never mind all the kids reading the Odyssey. Never mind just how the Greek gods are in the air and all, you know, people want to study. I mean, there's a lot of Percy Jackson in that. Like he's very popular, and so. But like, sorry, Rick Riordan, who wrote the Percy Jackson books, and so on. But so it feels like we were primed for a moment to return to this culture, but there is something there about like, you know, the magic trick that has been achieved with this.
Do you, in your own, because we're in a rhetorical situation, have you noticed a difference in your students in terms of this question of like reading and literacy over time? Like, or do you feel like, have we as teachers witnessed us moving closer and closer to a dark age? And a really nice, bright question. And then two, like, do you feel helpless, empowered? Because I think a big part of Odysseus' story too here, which is really works really well to me, is this idea of like, you can't take the whole. I think Athena says this to him at one point where she's like, why do you feel like you have to take responsibility and accountability? You are not a god, and yet you feel like you need to be responsible for not just your actions but all of your men's actions, right? Why are you carrying that weight? That's not necessarily your burden to bear. It's not your problem, because she sort of says, right? Why do you feel like you have to take on the whole world's problems?
I love that question as being framed towards a teacher, because in the classroom, we have this obligation to bring along as many as possible. And at my institution, there's much more pressure to keep students there. We need them enrolled and we need to keep them moving. We are not sacrificing their education, but I think if a professor from the 70s looked at my syllabus policies, they'd be like, what a pushover, right? Like, there's been a way, especially post-COVID, that we've been more accepting, right? I don't know about you. My attendance policy has become much more liberal, much more easygoing. And yet I do think my policies continue to be, I will help you as long as you are trying. And if you are the small subset of students who it's clear shouldn't be in college yet, got pushed into it, aren't prepared for this, but are also not trying, then I think that to me is a sign that you're not worth my time. Whereas the students who are maybe very poorly prepared, but are trying their darn best, I try to find a way to get them where they're going. I mean, I try to help every student, but and this goes back to the specter of AI. I think the better AI conversations remember that students having AI just write their papers for them, that's a symptom, not a disease, right? Like, that belies a deeper lack of understanding or a lack of time. So, um, the basic answer to your question is yes. The course I teach in the fall, I get to assign 3 short stories. One of those short stories is 30 pages long. I am getting fewer and fewer students every year who will commit to the 30 pages. Last year, I warned them all. I'm like, look, the one due Monday is due Monday so that you have multiple days. This one is 30 pages. You have 3 days to read 30 pages. And I finally had to say, I'm not reading any responses that start with, this was long. Because I'm tired. Like, that's not a unique, interesting thought. But like,
Also, it's
when
not
we
that
were
long.
students, I would, but I only teach first years. Like, I didn't get assigned a novel between weeks until I was a senior. But the fact, and I don't think it's a lack of literacy skills. I think it's an attention issue. And I focus much more in my teaching about helping students understand that the only resource you control anymore is your attention. And if you can think carefully about how you want to spend that attention and make conscious choices. And I tell them, like, I'll sit down with a mobile game, I'll sit down with Instagram, and I'll burn off a half hour, but I like to make that conscious choice that I'm doing that. And helping students understand that, like, coming to college means you are making the conscious choice that you are going to give your attention over to these things. And you are going to not question within reason what your instructors are asking you to read, or with, to the length of assignments. You're going to instead think about, how can I give my attention over to improving my skills and my abilities and my thinking so that I can improve there. And where I was at, we're in the halcyon days of July, but where I was at in May is I had a couple conversations with colleagues. I actually think we have started to rebound. Do you know the grand theory of the Mariah Carey Christmas song, where like on November 1st you see that little tick up for like, we're coming back to Christmas? That's
Yep.
the moment I'm at with my students reading. Like, I am seeing the glimmer of a change, and I am seeing students who are coming to me now very against thoughtless AI use, not against AI use period, but against thoughtlessly using it. Best example of this, I have a great student this fall or this spring. He turned in a totally AI paper. I was like, this is just a bad paper. Like this is just not worth my time to read. And he said he didn't learn anything from me, but he had been reading on TikTok, and a student had posted on TikTok that said, I wish I was as smart as I was before I started using AI. And to this student in my class, this was a wake up call. He's like, that's
Mm.
me. Like, I used to be smarter than this. I used to be able to write a better paper than this. And I've outsourced my learning and thought so much that I can't get there. I would say that, again, it's all broad strokes and it's all generalizing. But as I read my student body, talk to me in September, but as I read them right now, I think they've bottomed out and they're starting to rebound and saying like, okay, I'm going to take these things seriously. And I think we're going to continue to see improvements. And there's something connected to COVID and all that, I'm sure. But do you agree, or are your students still headed down?
So I've seen, I mean, like you, I have had the steady, like, chipping away of, now I would never even think to assign a long reading, right? Like, if an article is not less than 2 pages, like, no one's going to read it, kind of thing. Like, I've had to make many concessions over slowly over time. The waves have beaten me down where I'm just like, practically speaking, I cannot assign a lot of reading. Yes, I've heard the siren song, everything that I had, and I cannot have again. But I agree with you that so Odysseus's superpower is not actually his strength or even his cunning. It is his self-awareness in this movie. Right? Yeah. That's what sets him apart from everybody else. Yes, of course, like, am I fainting when the camera is showing Penelope's back turned and we hear the bung, and then I'm like, yes, it's happening.
How did we get this far without mentioning that? But that's right? My let's go moment. I broed out. Yes.
Yeah, so good. And the way it's shot, it's like so classic, but at the same time, I wouldn't want it any other way. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, we have, yes, it's like, it's classic for a reason, kind of thing, where I'm like, it just feels so good to see that moment. It's a true superhero, like, let's go moment. Anyway, but like, as much as I love that, to me, this Nolan's version of the Odyssey positions Odysseus' superpower as him identifying that there is a dark age coming, right? Like, the idea that he can see his men can't. His men are just trying to survive, and they're doing what they've been taught and trained to do, and they don't stop to think about it, right? All he thinks about, basically, and all that plagues him is this idea of like, what will the world now become now that we have broken Zeus's law, right? Now that I have broken Zeus's law, what is going to happen? What has changed? It's like the fact that he is smart enough to think about that and like introspective enough to be like, how culpable am I in this, and what responsibility do I have to do something about it? Like, that to me is his superpower. And so, like, I agree that like there are some students that seem to have made this realization where they're like, I can't just keep doing the things I've been doing for the past few years. I need to stop and think about the consequences, and to think about, do I want this to be the world that I live in, and do I want this to be the way that I live? And the best example I can think of is like, and it was so sad. It was such a sad moment. At the end of every semester, I do like a Reddit style AMA where like I just open it up and I'm like, anything you've ever wanted to ask me, let's go. Like, it's something we didn't cover in class that you're still wondering about, a sort of personal question, life coaching, right? Like, I'm not professionally qualified to give life coaching, but so this is sort of how I set it up. Like, ask me anything you want. And it was like 2 semesters ago, a student said, how do I read a whole book?
Oh,
I want to be able to read a whole book.
Yeah.
But I cannot bring myself to do it. What advice would you give me so that I can make changes in my life so that I can actually read books again? And I was like, I almost started crying. I was like,
yeah.
But the fact that he knew enough to ask that question and ask for help, to me, was a hopeful sign. As opposed to, I think books are stupid, I don't need to read those, right? Like, so at least that's there.
I mean, we're bridging a little to our Toy Story 5 discussion about tech,
yeah.
but I do think that there's a way in which some people simplify too much. They forget that this is an actual addiction. And that question from your student, to me, shows like they don't know how to choose. And I think when people are insensitive about this kind of attention economy thing, it's that they don't understand that the sacrifices a student makes by not checking Instagram religiously or whatever their phone, like, there's a social loss that we all experience. Like, if I go sit and read a book, there is technically a social loss. I'm not engaging with my text messages. I'm not talking to my wife and kids. Like, but to teach students again that there's a reward to that, right? There's a cost and a benefit to kind of devoting your attention in that way is really beautiful. But I do think, I agree with you that that's not every student asking that question, but there are more of those students who are recognizing that they don't like who they've become without reading. And we're in a capitalist society that just wants your attention other places, and that's the resource they're farming and they're selling, right? They're selling you're looking at ads amongst the pictures from your friends. And so it does take kind of in the spirit of this movie, it does take all of us to kind of agree to uphold Xenia or Zeus's law. And if we don't have that kind of basic social contract, we will continue to be manipulated and divided in all these pieces of it. So yeah, but like, I don't know, maybe I'm just becoming totally Pollyannish, but like, how awesome that Nolan makes us think about all of this using the Odyssey, right? Like, it's just incredible to me the amount they did
Yeah,
with
absolutely. And not giving necessarily easy answers too, because the thing I'm thinking of from us talking about our students is like Odysseus really does feel caught between what he individually wants to do and his own values, right? He's a weird, like the film frames him as being a weirdo for wanting to strike his bow before he
Yeah.
tries to hunt something, right? Everyone's like, why are you doing that? That's actively hurting what you're trying to do. And he's just like, it feels like that's the honorable, like that's how to fight with honor, right?
Yeah.
And but then he feels caught between that and society, right? Because he's like, I'm so tired of following Agamemnon. And like, you could easily make the argument through this film that like it's not his fault because he is just a pawn in this larger system, right? Like they keep unveiling all these layers, right? They're like, oh, it actually wasn't just about Helen. It was about the trade routes, right? And then also ego. Like we haven't mentioned John Bernthal, I can't believe, but like when we see John Bernthal's Menelaus, it's so clear that like part of why war happens, which we've known for ages, right? Like is like male ego too, right? Like and so there are all these other forces outside of Odysseus's control that he can't control, but are actively impacting his fate, right? And the fate of the world. And so like the film asks but doesn't have a clear answer to this question of like, how much as an individual do you have to bear the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? Like how much of it is out of your control because there's a whole system in place to do a lot of these things that you don't like, right? Versus like how much agency do you as one person have and have to be complicit and culpable for what's happening in the world, right?
Well, in my fake homework assignment for you, when you write a Odysseus review, if you do, is to fold that back into your comment before that Odysseus's superpower is his self-awareness, because that's a part of it, right? If he can remain true to himself and act in a way that he feels the honor, then he doesn't have to care so much about what those other people think or say of him. Can't let the moment pass without saying shout out to George Lucas, because now we again hear that it's the taxation of trade routes to the outlying star systems, right? Like that's now the heart of the Trojan War as well. So, but I do think that also that your commentary there reminds us that there's never been a truth, right? Like it's all storytelling. The storytelling of Helen, and then this is not in the scope of this movie, but you add that the trial of Paris or the decision of Paris, and that the gods wanted him to pick the most beautiful woman, and that blah blah blah. Like there's just all these layers of the stories we tell ourselves, and that the narration and the story replaces the truth, and then we don't understand it. And in the film, in a very reminds me of Last Jedi, just to keep the Star Wars rolling, it does this by showing us different events repeatedly from different perspectives to show us that it's all mythology and it's all the story we tell ourselves. I think you're right that if Odysseus has a superpower, it's that he tells his own story and only lets that story. Like he doesn't repeat that he went to war for Helen, or he doesn't repeat that it was for Menelaus. He just says Agamemnon came, I owed my allegiance, I had to send a boat and go. And there's something there as well about the drawing of the lots and Alcinous' version versus Sinon's version versus Odysseus's version. And like that is kind of hard to untangle, and it's another chance where the film is a little ambiguous in that it shows you literally. I guess it doesn't show you anything that proves to be untrue, but the accounting of the conversations that happened in whispered ways we don't hear changes.
Well, again, it's different
with each
versions of the
retelling.
story, right? Because the version we hear from the underworld from Sinon reveals the truth, right? Whereas like the other versions of the story are everyone's telling their own version of the story that makes them look good, kind of like.
Odysseus in that as well, right? Because he also tells a story. He tells a version, and then in truth, he knew that the father needed money, so he found the honorable way for the father to get the money and protect his family while protecting the truth. Sorry,
right. That's what he explains why he let it happen, right? Because otherwise, the Odysseus we know, we would assume that he would be like, "That's not right, right? You Antinous. Why is it Antinous and not Antinous? Like,
I don't know.
Okay. Because I've always read it in my head as Antinous because it's spelled Antinous, right? But then, like, where's the ooh? I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know.
That's not important. But I keep hearing everyone say Antinous, like continuous, and I'm like, what? that's not how I thought you said it. But anyway, my understanding is that Antinous. I have so many thoughts. Okay, like. So let's just get out of here, like, because actually I've listened to a lot of podcasts where people are genuinely confused about what's happening with the storyline of like who did what and who was supposed to go where. My understanding is in that flashback scene where they're drawing the little tokens, right? The lottery
lots. Yep.
Yes. Antinous actually draws the "you got to go to war" one, but then he tries to pay off Sinon's family to be like, I will give your family a bunch of money if your son Sinon goes in my place, if we swapsies, right? However, the story that gets told, which goes back to what we're talking about, the story that gets told mostly by Antinous, but also by Odysseus, because he wants to protect the shame of the family that's poor.
Right.
Right. That's sort of how they explain why this truth hasn't come out before and why Odysseus just let it happen. Antinous goes around being like, well, I would have loved, I really wanted to go to Troy, right? He can say that because he didn't actually have to go. He's like, I really wanted to go to Troy. I wanted to fight with Odysseus. I wanted to but he thought I should stay behind.
Yes.
Right? Because someone has to look after Ithaca and he was thinking about the future. So much BS. Like he was thinking about the future. This is what he tells Penelope. He's thinking about the future of Ithaca. He knew I would have to be a big part of that. Right. Ugh, gross.
Well, and Telemachus doesn't know how to interpret that because I think sometimes it's unclear. But like Telemachus is a baby, like he's a toddler, so he has to accept these truths. Yes. So you have the correct version from Antinous.
Okay. And then what we learn from Sinon is that all of that, like Odysseus was knew the truth about what he was clear-eyed about what was going on. However, what he didn't know was that Sinon's family didn't actually get any money, and Sinon's father died in poverty. Right. That's the thing I think people don't catch, and that is the big no for Antinous is like your family didn't actually hold up their part of they didn't do the honorable thing and hold up their end of the bargain. They had their cake and ate it too, right? Like he didn't have to go to war, and they just let the shepherd. The father was a shepherd, right?
Yep.
Because I think Corey Hawkins is like, hey, wait, no, isn't that the name of your shepherd's son that went to war?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify that. I think you're right that it's not even just a shepherd. It's not like Eurymachus. It's also like a shepherd that worked for Antinous'
for that family. So, yes,
and I mean that to me invoked all the history in the United States of when the draft comes around for the Civil War. It's just like the poor people who get sent because everybody who's rich can pay a replacement to go show up in there.
And that's what Eumaeus says, right? He's like, in that hall right now are all the sons that were hidden away because their fathers didn't want them to fight in the war. Yeah. So these are all the draft dodgers and the people who have never seen the war, right? And all like that are trying to take over, and that's bad, right? Because they're the cowards who did not want to fight.
Well, and so yes, and everything we just said, and then like Sinan's, it's not his first line, but I think the second time we see Sinan's story, he also is like, tell my dad, like, I did a bunch of heroic stuff, and like maybe add a
Yeah.
few more things in. So like you get
Exaggerate.
again this sense of like, and this goes right to that final
Mhm.
comment. The truth is only the stories we tell. We can change that to whatever we want, and that's the original sin. Seemingly, is then we can just
But
lie
also
and
can
lie
be
and lie.
good, right? Because when Telemachus goes to Menelaus, he said, Menelaus says, I'm really sorry I had no news of your father. And he says, no, you did, just not where he is, but who he is. And like he
Yeah.
feels like he learns a greater truth about Odysseus than the other songs and stories would have indicated, right? So yeah. Wow.
And I mean, telling the Trojan horse story from the inside of the horse, like
So good.
such an obvious choice that has never been done to my knowledge. And like the grossness of it, like he says, we had to piss in there. It's like, oh, of course they did. And
the drowning was
dudes
tough.
die. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like just so brilliant in terms of filmmaking. So, well, we got to leave some meat on the bone for the other suitor to come. So I think we'll save a lot of our other categories.
We have to undo the tapestry. We have to unweave.
Yeah, that's right.
To make more time.
to pretend we didn't do this. So, but I don't want to leave this conversation, which has been excellent, but without just like shout out, like give me like one or two of your favorite performances from this, because we've talked so much about the text and the themes and all that, but like this is also a movie they made.
Right. So, I mean, Matt Damon, like you said, unsurprisingly incredible, and incredible because he can seemingly do. He like Odysseus is a polytropos, right? Like he seems like he can do it all. He can do the action hero thing that this movie requires. He's believable in that way. Also, like very jacked compared to whenever I saw him in a movie last. I was like, whoa, like, what's going on?
On Amy Poehler, he said he stopped eating gluten, and the end, he just turned into
no more Dunkin' Donuts. No free ads, Dunkin' Donuts. Sorry. Okay, that makes sense. It's sort of like this is really, I'm gonna edit this out, but it's sort of like in Parks and Rec where Chris Pratt's character is like, it's crazy. I just stopped drinking beer and this happened. Yeah, like
almost exactly that. You're right.
Yeah, but yeah, Matt Damon, incredible because he seems like he can do it all. He does all the dramatic scenes. He's still like funny and likable, right? A lot of other podcasts have talked about his casting being genius because it gets us rooting for Odysseus even when he's making bad choices or isn't perfect, right? And still kind of hold what we were talking about earlier about how all of the sort of nobility has to shift to Odysseus as a single character because it needs to cast men in general and humans as being really bad. And I think Matt Damon's casting like makes that possible, and him with a puppy, oh my gosh, like we'll talk about that scene next time because that's the scene that really made me cry. But yeah, so he would be number one. Best actor, let's go. Then second, I mean, this seems like kind of predictable, but like Anne Hathaway really surprised me. Maybe that's partly because I didn't expect much from Penelope as a character. Maybe it's because the last movie we saw her in was Devil Wears Prada 2, you know what I mean? Which doesn't require as much dramatic acting as this. But I really thought the vitriol and the bitterness and how she's like kind of mean to her own son, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Just she's really dialing it up every time she's on the screen. She wasted no screen time with her performance.
I mean, we shouldn't let Nolan off the hook for basically never having meaningful female characters. But this is a step up from the Emily Blunt in Oppenheimer, where Emily Blunt got
similarities.
Yes. But she got like one good moment, and Anne Hathaway has one when she lays out Telemachus that will 100% be the clip they use in her reel. But you're right to say that all the other times she popped up, she delivered absolutely. So I think, I assume best supporting. I don't think they'll make a case for a lead, but. And also,
I don't know.
You missed an Anne Hathaway movie. You didn't see Mother Mary because that was the last time I saw Anne Hathaway, which is more my commentary on like she's already been in 3 movies and she has a 4th coming out in like 2 weeks. And I think there's also the Colleen Hoover. It's just Anne Hathaway year.
And then I have a harder time choosing a third. I would probably have to go Samantha Morton because she did such an amazing job as Cersei. I have some notes. We'll talk about it next time about like Cersei versus Calypso. I have some questions just about
Intriguing.
the adaptation of those two characters. But having read I'm gonna forget the author's name now. The retelling of Circe, the novel Circe. I assume you've read this.
Madeline, can't remember the last name, but yes, very good book.
I felt like her performance what really was drawing a lot from that book.
Actually pulled it out to read it to see, like, as I think it's one of those cases where like maybe that's what Nolan had read too. So yeah. I agree with that.
But yeah, how about you?
I'm gonna throw in Leguizamo. You know, I think there's a good case for him for Best Supporting Actor. We'll see what the year shapes up to be. We're not doing Oscars watch. That's PT territory. But
no.
He stood out to me as one. Robert Pattinson was like absolutely twisting his mustache evil in ways that were really wonderful. And like, I don't know. I feel like I should be over Barenthal by now. Maybe I'm also watching The Bear new season, but it's like he's doing the same thing every time, but you're like, he's so good at this one thing and like just bro being a bro and so on. And you know, Lupita gets very little, but not in a way where you're like, why would she take this part? It's like, yeah, she took this part and makes a lot of those few moments she gets when she grabs Telemachus and is like, tell your mother that I'm sorry for it all. It's like you heard the 1,000 ships in her voice, and it was so wonderful. And just really great choice to cast her in that role. So, and we could go on and on. There's basically not a bad performance. I think Tom Holland understood the assignment. He's catching a lot of strays, being like, he's of a lighter weight class than the rest of them. But I think Telemachus is just a bad part in those ways. Like it's a silly part in some ways. So
yeah, I want to defend him because I actually thought he was quite good, because his persona as an actor, as we've known him, is perfect for the role of like the naive son who doesn't totally know what's going on and has to kind of catch up as we go. And it has to have a certain innocence for his role to work in the story. And I do feel like it's when people are criticizing his performance, it's less about his performance and more about he's just fulfilling the assignment of what the character requires, right? And like he's doing a great job, in my opinion, of that, because he seems so earnest. And I immediately for his first scene, I immediately understood. I'm like, oh, like Christopher Nolan is actively trying to leverage his Peter Parker-ness in this part as like a shorthand, right? To be like, he's just this like plucky young kid who's just trying to do his best and is like way in over his head with all these other adults. And is Tom Holland a little too old to be playing that kind of part? Maybe, but like also we keep asking him to play much younger roles than himself. So I think he's completely blameless in this. And his scene, I said I wasn't gonna go back to this. We can talk about it more next episode, but like the scene where Argus recognizes Odysseus and dies, and then Telemachus recognizes Odysseus. I thought his performance in that was amazing. Like his the welling of the tears and just how like overcome with emotion he feels, where he finally recognizes and accepts that, like, this is my dad. Like, I thought was great. Well, and apparently really hard to shoot, because Tom Holland was like, I thought we were going to do my part of that scene first. And then Christopher Nolan was like, no, we're going to start with the dog. And then the whole crew is just crying because the dog did such an amazing job. He was like, the dog, he swore, but he was like, the dog nailed it. And then I had to be like, okay, I guess I'll say my lines now, which I thought was really funny.
Well, and to close out the performance discussion, just to note, all of this looks effortless and like some mighty fine acting. And then you throw in the fact that they could only film in 3 to 5 minute chunks before resetting the mag on the IMAX camera, and that the size of the camera and equipment, this is only part of what I'm only partially understanding this so far, but it's so large that you couldn't do traditional like standing across from each other. So they were often looking at the other actors in a mirror setup so that they could still act off each other in this really artificial, bizarre way. And yet learning all that after just made me respect, because I never felt that in the film. They were always reacting to each other and responding. So some really incredible work. I mean, it is way too early to be talking about the Oscar race, but like, it's going to be hard for this not to be the only story we're talking about. Like, I love the Dune movies, but it's like, it's going to be a tough uphill road to be competitive with this. So, I mean, I'm the first to root for it to happen. I think it'd be fantastic if they're both this good, but we'll have to see. But we'll talk about that more later.
Yes. My plug will be for Prestige Junkie. Katie Rich had a really fun, like, conspiracy map bulletin board thing where she was like, wait, this Oscar race is just going to be 2015 all over again because and she listed, like, we have and I'm not going to get it right now, but she pointed out that we have a Matt Damon movie, we have an adaptation of an Andy Weir novel. Like, there's apparently all this stuff that's mirroring 2015's Oscar race in a way that's really fun. So go listen to that. All right, Greg, I think we can put a bookmark in. Next time I want to talk, obviously we're going to do a fuller Oscar watch with PT. I do want to talk a lot more about Zeus's Law, because I think that there's a little bit left in that conversation, because we talked a lot about a lot of stuff around Zeus's Law, but not Zeus's Law explicitly. And we can talk a little bit more about the scenes that we loved that we didn't get a chance to here. But in the meantime,
and we haven't mentioned the name Ludwig Göransson yet, and he needs some conversation outside of Oscar Watch as well. So there's my
below
homework.
The line stuff I figured we could save when PT's here. Yeah. That seems like a logical thing to do. So that was an omission, a purposeful omission, but that omission does not reflect us not caring about all the crafts and the below the line stuff. We're just saving it.
Yeah.
But that's a good call.
So in the meantime, people can find me on social media, primarily Letterboxd and Instagram at EyonCanon, EYEONCANON. And I don't know if I haven't quite decided whether I'm going to write up a full review of the Odyssey or not, but you can at least read that aforementioned prep. And again, it was before I saw the film, so it's kind of fun to look at it now and see what I was right and what I was wrong about. Easiest way to access that, which is just on my personal Substack, but if you just go to EyonCanon.com, spelled the same way I spelled it a minute ago. I also got to see Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma a little early. So if you check out my Letterboxd, you can hear my first take on that and look for a blog entry on that, because that is a crazy movie that I look forward to talking about.
Yes. Okay. When is that actually coming out?
I think it's the 7th of August.
Oh, okay. So it's not far. I thought it was more in the fall, but that makes sense. All right. Great. And I can put a link to your Substack in the show notes. Specifically,
there you go.
Odyssey.
It's in the show notes. Go there. Thanks, Jen. Thanks for the plug.
You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, and on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jen. I have not written anything on my Substack recently because I'm not as on it as Greg. But maybe there would be stuff there soon. This movie, I wrote a thing about Oppenheimer when it came out, so it does really feel like I should write something.
You've got a thread there. I think you found a thread about Odysseus' self-knowledge. You got that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I like it. All right. What's it? You already did the face.
Twang.
Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free, and you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. You will also receive occasional written reviews of new Star Wars and Marvel.